Hey guys, this is something I've kind of alluded to a few times on this channel, but not really made a video about, and I've always kind of wanted to make a video about it, because looking back on what happened to me, I mean it's been so long ago now that I have a fair amount of clarity around what happened, and the steps that I took to fix the issue weren't apparent at the time, but looking back I can see how they worked for me and could work for other people. So, my hope is that maybe someone might get something out of this video. But yeah, so I've always had an addictive personality, and I've kind of always thought about what causes it. And to be honest, most things I can kind of figure out when it comes to this sort of stuff, but when it comes to an addictive personality, I can't really find what it is that's causing it. It's sort of a combination of various things. I mean, if I look back from when I was pretty young, even as a kid in primary school, maybe 5 up to 12 or whatever, I remember being able to self-motivate myself to do things. I would kind of come up with these ideas or these sort of imaginary goals to push myself to complete things or to do things that I wanted to do, and I would kind of seem to be able to do them above and beyond what other people could do. Not necessarily things like school, but various other things, to do with, I guess, exercise and sports, and things like riding my bike, and there were video games and stuff like that when I was a kid. And it seems to come from a certain energy that I've always had. And I think the energy comes from wanting, well, I'm not sure where it comes from, but something that plays into it is the want for attention, or the want to be seen. Because I remember as a kid and even as a teenager, a lot of times things that would motivate me would be that I would want people to recognize me, and I would always have this sort of, always would be extreme in some way. So everything I would do, it wouldn't just be a little bit, it would be endless. It would just keep doing it, obsessive. So things like music, I basically initially heavy metal, and then I moved on to classical music, but I kept doing it so much that I wanted to be the best. I wanted the attention that it provided, and I mean there was obviously a love for it there, and I did genuinely and still do enjoy music, but a lot of it was driven by just wanting attention, and that comes from a sort of an empty place, a place that I just felt dissatisfied with the attention I was getting, or the lack of, and dissatisfied with the way I felt. So this was always sort of an extreme aspect to my personality that has never really gone away. Definitely now that I'm older, it's not as intense. It's still there at times, but I'm sort of aware of it. I'm aware of where it can go negatively, so I can use it. I can sort of manipulate it and use it to my benefit. And I've definitely taken very practical steps to improve my life in various ways that I hadn't when I was younger. So a lot of those feelings, the drive, the want to be extreme, are definitely gone. And I think naturally as we age, we kind of mellow out a lot. So yeah, but I can still definitely tell it's there in ways. A lot of it to do with food sometimes. I mean, I would just buy a bit of watermelon and then just want tons of it, buy a whole watermelon and eat it. Just ridiculous things like that. And sometimes it catches up with me and I don't even realize what's happening. So I've got to constantly be sort of aware of that sort of stuff. But back to what it was like. I mean, when I got into high school, I was always curious about altering my mind. Even in primary school, I remember wanting to change, to have weird experiences through weird meditations and stuff like that, to change my consciousness, or conscious experience of life. Don't know where that comes from, but I was always so curious. And then I got into high school and I sort of became a lot more unhappy, withdrawn, a lot of issues. When I was about 13, I tried alcohol. Actually, no, I smoked pot first, just with friends, thought it was fun. And then alcohol, and then suddenly because I'd found alcohol, it just seemed like an answer to me. I was always so anxious around people, but I was a very social person, so drinking was obviously the answer to that, and I never questioned it. And then the drinking was throughout the whole experience. Besides from when I started on meth, drinking was basically the primary problem. And then as I got older, I tried ecstasy when I was about, I think, 17 or 18, and that naturally just leads to speed, which leads to, I had a lot of psychedelics, eventually found meth, and I tried heroin once, but that was it. Luckily, I couldn't find more of it, but I seemed to be more attracted to things that assisted me socially. So things like speed, meth, ecstasy, and alcohol was always the primary one. And I mean, because I felt so unhappy and I guess wanting social attention and stuff, wanting to socialize, I just took the drug use to the extreme. I mixed that with, my extreme nature. Every time I go on a binge, it would just be until I had nothing left. And it was crazy. I just could not stop. I didn't care whether I lived or died, and just kept taking drugs and drinking. And it was just, it was up until I was 23, and that was when I stopped everything. So I'm lucky to be alive. I'm lucky to not be in jail. I don't have a criminal record or anything, and I'm incredibly lucky to have all those things, to not have all those things, because I wasn't very careful a lot of the time. I was so young and immature that I just didn't think of those sort of things. But yeah, so the second part of this video, I wanted to talk about how I actually fixed the issue. What steps, the 7 steps that I took, now that I look back, that allowed me to overcome drug addiction. They're not in any particular order. There are some that is kind of in a similar order to what they are experienced like, but some of them sort of switch back and forth. A lot of it does seem kind of obvious, and I did it instinctively, and I'm able to break it down now and just let you know what I actually did and how it worked. So step 1 is hit rock bottom and become out of control. So this, I speak to some people who I have had people, because I've been nearly 12 years now, people find that out. 12 years now sober and, off drugs. People find that out and they ask me, how do they stop drinking? They may have some kind of problem with drinking. The first thing I ask them is, how bad is your drinking because of drug use? Because it's very hard, it seems, for people who drink just enough to cause a few problems, but it's not out of control. And for me, it destroyed my life. Like, I lost so many friends, and I moved cities and lost all my belongings and money and, family issues and possessions and all that stuff. And even emotionally and physically, it was just destroying me. I could not control it, and I just, got to a point where I took a lot of drugs, and I drank so much that I was so sick that it was just done. I just realized that if I took another drink, I could die, because I knew I was just that out of control, that drink would just lead to so much stuff. So because of the extremity of what I went to, it was, I read somewhere that it's only, I think, 5% of people who say they're never going to drink or take drugs again actually do that. Actually don't ever take them again, and that's because it's usually that 5% that was the most extreme, and it's the most extreme ones that are able to maintain it forever. So it's a bit of a tough advice to give, but sometimes if you just don't have that emotional leverage and it having destroyed so many parts of your life, it may be very hard for you to actually quit drugs and alcohol, because it's not causing that many problems. So one method would be to allow it to cause more problems, just do it more. But obviously I'm not going to give advice like that. But that may indicate why some people struggle, why you're struggling with quitting drugs and alcohol, because it's not as causing as many problems as it could. And when it's so extreme that it's destroying your life, it becomes kind of easy to make the choice to never do it again, which I did. So step 2, I realized the futility of drugs and alcohol. what drives, usually unhappy people will take drugs and drink alcohol excessively. It's usually to satisfy some kind of discomfort. You know, most of us use alcohol to make socializing more comfortable because it's inherently uncomfortable for human beings to socialize in certain ways. I guess we're always on some kind of alert around other people, and alcohol numbs that. So the futility of it is that what goes up must come down. Anything that goes up, it goes down again, and the downs are generally a lot worse than the ups. Eventually they just get worse and worse. In that sense, it is pointless. It's pointless to take drugs. It's pointless to drink, because whatever good you feel, you're just going to feel the same amount of bad or even worse. And the other part of it is that anytime that you take a drug or drink alcohol, you're running away from the opportunity to actually face the issue and cure it forever. So if it's it's always an emotion that we're running away from. We might feel fear or unhappiness or whatever it is. So we take a drug or we drink to sort of resolve that issue. But as long as you do that, you're never going to actually fix the issue. So if you were to never take drugs and drink, you could actually face the issue and resolve the emotion, either by facing the situation or feeling through the emotion until you release the trauma. So the third step is it's going to kind of sound dumb and obvious, but it has a little more to it. So the third step is never use drugs or drink again. So it's pretty obvious. If you want to quit drinking or using drugs, you are to never do it again. But it's very important to understand what this means. So basically, you need to make a decision, and it needs to be very clear, and there needs to be a moment in time. What I did was, it was in 2008, nearly 12 years ago, around this month or April, I had hit rock bottom and I was just done. And I said to myself, I realized all that stuff that I spoke about before, the futility of it, and I'd already hit rock bottom. And then I said, I'm done. I'm going to have my last drink ever, and that's the end. So I poured a cup of wine and drank the cup of wine, and that was the end, nearly 12 years ago. I made the decision to never do it again. It's very important to make that decision very, very clearly in your mind. As much as, it will give you anxiety and it will seem impossible and people will doubt you, but you've got to make the decision. The reason being is that the coming months after you quit, there's a lot of urges that come up, and you need to deal with the urges, and having made that decision makes it much easier. But I'll get into that a bit on one of the other steps a bit later. So the fourth step, tell everyone you know, and then hang out with people who don't take drugs or drink. So this is something I did. As soon as I had that last drink that I mentioned before, I went to see some friends of mine that I used to take a lot of drugs with and that I used to drink alcohol with. I went straight over there and I told them that I'm never drinking again. And they didn't believe me, understandably, because they saw how bad I was. They saw the extreme nature of, the way that I used to drink and take drugs. None of them believed me, but I'm glad I did it, because the more people you tell, the more sort of, public pressure that you have. And what's important then is to try, if you can, try to make friends that just don't do that sort of thing. I hung around with people who, if I even brought up talking, because when you take drugs and drink, you hang out with people and all you do is talk about drugs and drinking. But then after you quit, if you hang out with people that even if you bring up the subject, they're like, what do you mean? I don't even understand what you're talking about. It kind of makes you forget or even feel a bit more normal. And so sometimes I don't actually suggest going to AA meetings, but I went to one and I didn't like it. It might work for some people. Do what you need to do. But for me, it was better just not being around it at all and just trying to be with people who had nothing to do with it. So the fifth step, fight the urge to take drugs or drink. So I didn't realize this is what was happening at the time. All I knew was that I'd decided to never take drugs or drink again. That definitely helped me deal with the urges. And also, obviously, hitting rock bottom, I was just done. But what's going to happen is when you first quit, for a few months, maybe up to maybe 6 months, you'll get urges to drink, or you'll get urges to take drugs. These urges disappear. That's the main thing to realize. At this point, nearly 12 years on, I don't have an urge at all. I mean, I've held alcohol for people, lifted up to my nose and smelt it. I've done all that sort of stuff, and there's simply no urge left to drink. And that's the beauty of it, is that one day you will get to that point where you won't feel like drinking, you won't want to take drugs, because it just dissipates. So as long as you are drinking and taking drugs, you will have urges to continue to do that. The body is geared towards creating urges to do things repeatedly that make you feel good, which is a survival mechanism, obviously, to do with eating, and throughout history, it would have been important to drive us to eat. But now with drugs, it's a problem. So with the urges, you've got to figure out ways to get through them. I mean, some people just hold on for dear life. Some people, there's this book I read, Brain Over Binge. It's about, eating too much, binge eating, and she talks about dismissing the urge. So just not having a conversation with it, just ignoring it, just dismissing it. There's different ways to do it, but just know that an urge is temporary. It is an emotional and thought-related experience. You'll get images of yourself doing drugs, drinking. You'll get feelings, anxiety feelings that come up that feel like they need to be extinguished by doing the thing. But that's where your resolve to never do it again comes in. Just hang on to that resolve and know that within a few months, you'll never experience those urges again. So the 6th step that I took, replace drugs and alcohol with something else. So addictive natures are always going to be addictive natures. They're always going to need something to satisfy them. They have a hunger. Addictive people have a hunger, have an anxiety, or have some kind of drive and energy to do things. You can't just take away these things and expect it to be okay. So, I mean, I personally recommend social related things, because socializing in itself does heal. A lot of drug and heavy alcohol users have a lot of issues with socializing, so this is a good place to start. Whatever it is that you choose to do, spend your energy on, say it's business, starting a business, or exercise, sports, academia, creating a YouTube channel, or writing, or music, any hobbies. Try to do something that involves other people. So, if you want to go to the gym, then go to group classes. Or if you want to start a business with someone else. Play a team sport, or if say cycle with other people. This is very healing, and it will just really get into it, really make it your new obsession to do whatever the thing is that you've chosen. And this will at least keep that energy at bay while the urges go away. And it is something that you'll have to deal with for most people for the rest of their lives, an addictive personality. So it's good to sort of understand positive applications of it in hobbies and things like that. So the last step, it's kind of similar to the step number 6, but it's so important for the long-term success that I have to sort of reiterate it and make it its own step, which is socialize as much as you can. Social interactions heal, connections with people heal. Fix your social skills, be with people. This is where maybe things like AA and that type of thing can help, because it means that you've got something to focus on. There's people around you. Just keep trying to make connections. It is very hard for a while. It might be a year or more where you just feel so empty and unable to connect with others, but it does come. It just means focusing on social skills and focusing on making connections, and just seeing that life can actually be quite happy without drugs or alcohol, but it does take some time. So whatever you do, try to involve other people in that thing. So thanks for listening, guys. That's the 7 steps and a bit of my story for what, my addictive personality. So feel free to leave me a comment if you have any questions or you want to chat. If you're struggling with this yourself, definitely happy to chat to you. Thanks, guys.